The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character. The first thing I remember is the noise. Everyone paused in the middle of eating, forks hanging in the air, when my sister Chloe suddenly grabbed her boyfriend Ethan and dragged him toward me. She already had that familiar cruel expression on her face, the one she used whenever she wanted to turn me into the joke of the room. The glow from the Christmas lights reflected across her cheeks when she finally spoke. "This girl is the loser of our family." Robert and Susan laughed right away, like it was something completely normal, like humiliating me was just another part of the holiday tradition. I stayed quiet and kept my face still, saying nothing at all, but Ethan spoke. He glanced first at the parents, then over at me, and his voice was calm but sharp. "That's interesting," he said, "because she isn't the person who is finished here." At that moment, everything started to change in a quiet way. My name is Maya. For as long as I can remember, I have existed in the corners of every room inside my own home. Even when I was a small child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I had already learned how to move without making a sound. I knew how to carry plates carefully so they wouldn't clatter together. I understood how to stand in the darker parts of a room where the light didn't quite reach, leaving more space for the people my family actually cared about. Most evenings, dinner felt like a performance where everyone else had lines to speak. Chloe always sat right in the center of the table, directly under the bright chandelier, and she always received her meal first. By the time the serving bowls reached me, there was usually very little left: cold vegetables, a broken corner of bread, or sometimes the smallest piece of chicken. I never complained. If I did, Susan would use that soft but cutting tone she was so good at. "Don't be selfish, Maya," she would say. She said those words so often that they became a regular background sound in our house. Robert rarely looked in my direction unless something was broken and needed fixing. The only time he really spoke to me was about practical problems: a dripping faucet, a late electricity notice, or some chore Chloe didn't feel like doing. I was useful when work needed to be done, but I wasn't important enough to receive attention. He always told me these responsibilities were building my character. But Chloe never had to learn those same lessons. She got new clothes, signed up for new activities, and was given every opportunity. All I received were lectures about being grateful and realistic. One winter afternoon stands out clearly in my memory. Chloe had forgotten an important school project at home. It was a big presentation poster that Susan had spent hours helping her decorate. When the teacher called the house asking about it, Robert didn't question Chloe about leaving it behind. Instead, he turned toward me, his voice already angry. "Why didn't you remind your sister to bring it?" he demanded. It was as if my purpose wasn't to live my own life, but to make sure Chloe's life stayed perfectly organized. Chloe didn't even look embarrassed. She never did. In our house, blame found its way to you even when you hadn't done anything wrong. As the years passed, I started feeling like I was fading away. Any small achievement I managed to earn disappeared quickly because Chloe was always performing, always demanding attention. When I was around 16, I was accepted into an art program downtown. I remember walking home with the acceptance letter clutched in my hands, my heart pounding because I thought maybe, just maybe, this time they would notice me. Susan read the letter silently and then placed it on the kitchen counter. "Chloe has dance practice that day," she said. "And we can't drive you across the whole city." When I didn't respond, she added, "Your mother would want you to think practically about this." That letter was thrown away later that night. 2 days later, Chloe's brand new dance outfits arrived by mail. The money that had been saved for my classes, the same money that was supposed to help with my future education, quietly disappeared. No one explained where it went, but I didn't need anyone to explain. It all went toward Chloe's life instead: new designer clothes, deposits for her programs, and weekend trips she wanted to take. Eventually, I learned it was easier not to ask about money that was supposed to belong to me. Whenever I asked questions, Robert would sigh heavily like he was exhausted from trying to teach me something obvious. "We spend money where it matters most," he would say. I always understood what those words really meant. Strangely, no one in our house ever called it favoritism. They called it support. They said they were simply doing what was best for the family. Back then, I believed them because believing them made life in that house feel a little less cruel. Still, I wasn't completely blind. I had small ways of protecting myself. Clear's throat late at night. I would sit in a narrow space above the washing machines in the laundry room and draw quietly for hours. I hid small amounts of money inside envelopes behind the detergent bottles. I was slowly building a private world for myself, one where I didn't have to beg for a place at the table. But even then, part of me believed things might change someday. I thought if I stayed patient, worked hard, and caused no trouble, eventually they would allow me into the warm circle they always kept for Chloe. It took years before I understood something important. That warmth was never meant for me. That realization arrived slowly, like a door closing without making any sound. I was working late at the office one evening when the city outside felt distant and quiet. I heard Chloe's voice drifting from the break room. She sounded loud and careless. "My sister doesn't really have a job," she told someone while people laughed. "She just hangs around, and Ethan only keeps her here because he feels sorry for her." I didn't step into the room. I stayed behind the conference room door holding my laptop bag, feeling that old familiar ache again. By the time I walked past them later, they were already talking about something else, like she hadn't just humiliated me, but the real problem came the next morning. The project file I had spent weeks creating had disappeared from the shared computer folder. In its place was another version. It was clearly my work, just slightly polished so it looked like someone else's idea. Chloe's initials were typed neatly on the signature line. I stared at the computer screen for a long time while the cursor blinked slowly back at me. A junior assistant eventually walked into the room. He looked nervous, like he wished he could disappear. "I saw her download your file yesterday," he whispered. "Then she deleted the original." He kept glancing toward the hallway to make sure nobody noticed us talking. I didn't say much, I only nodded. This kind of thing wasn't new to me. It was a pattern I had been watching my whole life. I opened the computer history logs. There it was, her username, the exact time she accessed it. The deletion of my file, then the upload of the same project under her name. Every step had been deliberate. During the meeting that afternoon, Chloe told the same story she always told about me. "Maya quits everything," she said casually. "She always gives up when things get difficult." A few people laughed softly. Ethan didn't. For a brief moment he looked at me, like he was trying to understand what I was thinking. I kept my hands flat on the table and felt the cold wood beneath them. It felt like I was wrapped inside a heavy coat that had been hanging on me for years. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself, and I didn't ask her why she kept rewriting who I was every year. When the meeting ended, she walked past me wearing a polite, fake smile. I smiled back. After that, I didn't go home. Instead, I walked out of the office and into the freezing night air. Everything felt slow and distant, like I was moving underwater. The traffic lights and passing cars looked unreal. I kept walking until the sharp cold finally cleared my head. Eventually, I stopped outside a shared workspace located 2 blocks away from our building. I typed in the entry code and the lock beeped as the door opened. The office inside was empty and brightly lit by white fluorescent lights. Somewhere in the background, a printer hummed because someone had forgotten to shut it off. The air smelled faintly like stale coffee grounds. It wasn't comfortable silence, but it helped me feel steady again. I placed my laptop on the desk and reopened the history logs. Each timestamp felt like another small betrayal. Chloe had downloaded my project, erased my original file, and uploaded her version. She even sent Ethan an email late at night claiming my ideas were weak and that she had to correct them. I didn't feel angry, I just kept looking. Computer logs don't lie, they don't invent stories. They simply record what actually happened. I copied every record into a folder and titled it Documents. Then I began collecting everything else: invoices, bank transfers, screenshots of financial plans she had approved without permission. I found emails where she described me as overwhelmed, unreliable, or mentally unstable. She had spent years quietly convincing everyone that I was a failure so she could take my work and my position. This wasn't new behavior, but it was the first time I had undeniable proof. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Aunt Sarah. She sent a photo of several old papers she discovered while cleaning. They were documents about the trust fund my mother had left for me when I was a teenager, the same money that mysteriously disappeared back then. "Your mom wanted you to have these," she wrote. I stared at the glowing screen until my eyes started to ache. Then I added the pictures to my folder. At about 1 in the morning, I walked to the far corner of the office where the tall windows stretched from the floor to the ceiling. Outside, the city was dark and quiet. Snow had begun falling, tiny white flakes drifting slowly beneath the streetlights. I watched them for a long time until my heartbeat slowed and my thoughts became calm again. Then I opened a new spreadsheet. I started listing everything I had actually done for the agency, the clients I had secured, the advertising campaigns I managed, the projects Chloe had taken credit for, and every extra hour I worked. The list grew longer than I expected. Most people think getting even feels hot and angry, but for me, it felt cold and organized. I just typed, saved, and filed things away. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, I went to my old studio above the laundromat on the edge of Portland. This was where I did my first freelance jobs years ago. The big washing machines downstairs were rumbling and making the floor shake, just like they always did. The air smelled like soap and hot metal. I opened a storage drawer and found my old hard drives wrapped in a scarf from a long time ago. I plugged them in and waited for the folders to show up. There they were, all my early drawings and drafts. These were the designs that became the signature style of the agency. Chloe had built her whole reputation on these ideas, but they were mine. I took what I needed because it belonged to me. When I got back to the office, Ethan was in the meeting room looking at his computer like he had a headache. He looked up when I came in and told me to sit down. He turned his screen toward me and showed me the file KHLO said was hers. "Your name is still in the hidden data," he said. KHLO had changed the name of the file, but she didn't change the background info. Then he opened the history logs in my folder from the night before. "You pulled everything," he said. I just nodded. He asked if he had pressured me to do this, and I said no. He asked if I was sure I wanted him involved. I thought about being silent. I thought about what happens when you talk and no one listens, or when you stay quiet and people just keep hurting you. Yes, I told him. He looked at me very closely, not because he felt sorry for me, but because he was being careful. Then he leaned back in his chair. He said HR, the legal team, and the board needed to see this so they knew who actually did the work. He didn't sound angry. He just sounded like he was stating facts. We spent the next 2 hours putting the file together. We included every document, every log, and every stolen payment. We wrote it all down, printed it, and signed it. Around noon, he slid the final stack of papers across the table. "I'll take care of the official part," he said. "You don't have to be the one to deliver this," but a part of me wanted to be there. I was tired of just watching while they tried to erase me. I picked up the papers. They felt heavy. I put my hand on the stack and felt very steady. This time I said, "I'm not going to fix what they broke." I got to the house late on purpose. Christmas dinner was already happening when I walked into Robert's home. The air smelled strongly of cinnamon and roasted meat, and everyone's laughter sounded like they had practiced it. The lights inside were very bright compared to the cold weather outside. This house always tried to act like it was a happy home. I stood in the hallway and let the melted snow drip off my coat onto the floor. At first, they didn't even see me. Chloe was busy telling fake stories to some relatives about things she hadn't actually achieved. She was leaning against Ethan's shoulder, but he wasn't holding her back like he usually did. His hand just stayed in the air for a second and then dropped. When Robert finally saw me, he pointed to a chair at the far end of the table. "Sit down, we have been waiting for you," he said. He sounded like it was my fault for ruining the mood. Susan looked me up and down, checking my hair and clothes for any mistakes. "Try not to make a big scene," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just sat at the edge of the table in the shadows where I usually stayed. Everyone went back to eating. Then KH Lowe stood up and put her hand on Ethan's arm. She wanted everyone to look at her. "I want everyone to meet my sister," she said in a loud, happy voice. She smiled her fake smile and said, "This is the failure of our family." Robert was the first one to laugh. Susan nodded her head like she was proud of what Chloe said. All the other conversations stopped, and it got very quiet in that mean way I remembered from when I was a kid. It was the same sound that used to tell me to stay small and not say a word, but Ethan didn't laugh. He put his fork down and it made a small clinking sound on the plate. Suddenly, the room got very still. The Christmas music playing in the back didn't seem to matter anymore. Ethan looked at Chloe, then at her parents, and then he looked at me. "That's interesting," he said in a very calm voice. "Because you are fired." Chloe looked confused. "What?" she asked. "We are finished," Ethan said. Right now, some of the relatives started moving around, not sure if they should pretend they didn't hear him. The room stayed silent. Ethan took out his tablet and connected it to the big TV in the living room. The screen lit up the whole room. The first thing that appeared were my original project files. Everyone saw my name in the data. Then he showed the history logs with the exact times Chloe did everything. Her name was right there next to the words download, delete, and upload. He showed page after page of proof that she had stolen my work, my plans, and my designs. Chloe started to lose her voice as everyone saw the truth. "I didn't do that," she started to say. Ethan didn't even look at her. "You did," he said. Then the money showed up on the screen, the bank transfers, and the budgets she signed without anyone saying she could. Robert sat back and he looked very stressed. The fake image of the family was finally breaking. Susan opened her mouth but didn't say anything because she didn't have a script for this. Ethan kept talking. "The board of directors got the full report this morning. Human resources already fired her." Then he clicked one more time and my work portfolio appeared on the screen. It showed all the projects I actually led and the clients I brought to the company. "Maya is the co-founder and the main strategist of our agency," Ethan said while looking at me. "She has always been the one doing it." No one clapped, but the air in the house felt different, like everyone could finally breathe again. Chloe stepped away from the TV as if it were on fire. "You are picking her over me?" she asked. Ethan looked at her and said, "I am picking the truth." No one could look me in the eye. I just sat there with my hands on the table and felt very steady. For the first time, my silence made me feel powerful. Moving to Denver didn't feel like a brand new start right away. At first, it was just a lot of gray mornings and taking buses I didn't know. The rain hitting my window sounded different, but being far away gave me room to think and breathe. My new apartment was small and clean, and I had one plant by the window. The city was much quieter than Portland. There was no fake laughter or roles I had to play. Ethan helped me set up the new office because he knew I needed a place where I could actually live, not just survive. We kept it simple with a wooden desk and some of my drawings on the wall. Working felt much lighter now because no one was trying to steal my ideas. I didn't stop talking to my family completely, but I stopped being around them. Whatever happened with their audits or the questions from their friends was their problem to fix. Sometimes silence is the only thing people understand. A year later on Christmas Eve, I made dinner with some people from work who had become my friends. We made extra food and took it to a local shelter. The air was cold, but it made me feel awake. When I sat down at my own table later that night, I gave myself the best piece of food, the warm, crispy part I really wanted. No one told me I didn't deserve it. No one compared me to anyone else. It was a very quiet moment, but it felt like my life was finally mine. I used to think I had to be quiet so someone would notice me. Now I know that silence is a door I can choose to lock or open. I stopped waiting for a family that only liked me when I failed. Once I walked away, their noise couldn't follow me. I hope whoever hears this feels strong enough to walk toward a life that finally feels right.